Arjun Mehta thought he'd found love in Evelyn Carter's arms. But what started as a forbidden affair with a millionaire's wife in Sydney spiraled into obsession, betrayal, and a murder that shocked the entire city. When the truth finally surfaced, it wasn't just hearts that were broken, it was lives destroyed. The Crime Scene presents a new page of crime, a new mystery, a new shock case. Arjun Mehta had always been the definition of success, sharp-minded, ambitious, and quietly determined to make a name for himself far from his hometown of Bangalore. Sydney had given him everything he dreamed of: a high-paying job at a tech firm, a modern apartment overlooking the city skyline, and the respect of his peers. Yet, beneath the polished surface, Arjun's life felt painfully empty. His days blurred into coding marathons and lonely dinners eaten in front of a glowing laptop screen. The excitement he once had for life had faded into a routine of endless work and fleeting weekend distractions. Everything changed one evening at a charity gala his company sponsored. It wasn't his kind of scene: fancy suits, champagne flutes, and people talking about luxury yachts. But his boss had insisted he attend. That's when he saw her, Evelyn Carter. She stood out instantly, elegant yet distant, with a calm grace that drew attention without effort. Her laughter carried through the room, warm but tinged with melancholy. When she turned and their eyes met, Arjun felt something stir inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. Evelyn was the wife of Charles Carter, a real estate mogul whose name carried weight across Sydney. Everyone admired their perfect marriage, but to Arjun, she didn't look like a woman living a fairy tale. When she struck up a polite conversation with him, their connection was effortless, natural. Two people from completely different worlds finding a spark in the most unexpected place. That night, as Arjun walked home through the city lights, he couldn't shake her from his mind. He didn't know it yet, but that fleeting encounter would set off a chain of events that would destroy the illusion of his perfect life forever. Evelyn Carter wasn't like anyone Arjun had ever met. She carried an air of sophistication, yet her eyes revealed a quiet sadness that intrigued him. Their next meeting wasn't planned, a random encounter at a coffee shop near Darling Harbour. She was sitting alone, sunglasses on, scrolling through her phone, and when she noticed him, her lips curved into a faint smile. One conversation led to another, and before either realized it, they were meeting regularly, finding comfort in each other's company. Evelyn opened up about her life: the lavish mansion, the designer clothes, the constant parties, all things most people would envy. But behind the glamour was loneliness. Her husband, Charles Carter, was rarely home, buried in his empire and rumored affairs. Arjun became her escape, the person who listened, who made her feel seen. For Arjun, she was a fantasy come alive, a woman of class, maturity, and forbidden allure. What began as casual companionship evolved into something deeper, something dangerous. Late-night calls became routine. They started meeting in quiet spots, away from prying eyes. Arjun, once rational and cautious, began to lose control. Every message from Evelyn sent his heart racing. Every unanswered call left him restless. She, too, became addicted to the thrill, the secrecy, the stolen moments, the feeling of being wanted again. But beneath the excitement, there was a tension neither wanted to face. Evelyn knew the risk of being caught would ruin her life, and Arjun knew she belonged to another man, one powerful enough to crush him if the truth came out. Still, the desire was too strong to resist. Their affair wasn't just about love anymore. It was about escape, rebellion, and the dangerous fantasy that neither could let go. For 6 months, their affair burned in secret, hidden beneath Sydney's glittering skyline. Arjun and Evelyn lived double lives, she playing the devoted wife at charity events, and he pretending to be the focused engineer everyone respected. Behind closed doors, their connection was electric, consuming, and increasingly reckless. They met in boutique hotels under fake names, exchanged burner phones, and used coded messages to avoid suspicion. It was intoxicating, but the deeper they sank, the closer they drifted toward disaster. Rumors began to swirl among Sydney's elite. Evelyn's sudden absences and strange excuses didn't go unnoticed. Charles Carter, a man obsessed with control, grew suspicious. He hired a private investigator, a quiet professional with a reputation for exposing secrets. Evelyn sensed the walls closing in, but Arjun brushed off her fears. He believed their love was untouchable, unstoppable. That arrogance blinded him to how dangerous things had become. Arjun's friends started noticing changes in him too. The usually calm, collected guy was now edgy, missing deadlines, and talking about buying property far beyond his budget. His colleagues joked about him, finally falling for someone, unaware of the storm brewing behind his confident smile. Evelyn, meanwhile, was torn between two worlds, one of comfort and wealth, and another of raw emotion and forbidden passion. She promised Arjun she'd leave Charles soon, but her hesitation grew. Every time she packed a bag, fear crept in. Fear of losing her lifestyle. Fear of Charles's rage. Arjun began to doubt her intentions, wondering if she ever truly planned to be with him. What was once love began to twist into obsession. And in the shadows, Charles's investigator was closing in, watching every move, ready to expose the scandal that would destroy them all. The tension between Arjun and Evelyn reached its breaking point like a storm waiting to explode. Arjun had grown tired of empty promises and secret meetings. He wanted more, a future, a real life with her. But Evelyn had started to pull away, making excuses and canceling plans. Her messages became shorter, colder, and her voice carried the weight of guilt. Arjun could feel her slipping through his fingers, and that thought drove him insane. One night, he decided to follow her after she stopped answering his calls. He parked across the street from her mansion, watching the golden lights glowing through the glass windows. What he saw shattered him. Evelyn sitting beside Charles at the dinner table, laughing, looking like the perfect wife. The sight cut deep, filling him with humiliation and anger. All the sacrifices he'd made, all the risks he'd taken, suddenly felt meaningless. In that moment, something inside him broke. Over the next few days, his obsession spiraled out of control. He started tracking Evelyn's movements, scrolling through her photos online, and driving past her house late at night just to catch a glimpse of her. He sent dozens of messages, some desperate, others furious, demanding answers, begging for honesty. Evelyn, terrified of the chaos she had unleashed, warned him to stay away, but he couldn't let go. Arjun's world began to crumble. He stopped showing up to work, ignored his friends, and sank into a haze of sleepless nights and alcohol. The love that once gave him purpose now consumed him completely. He couldn't tell if he wanted Evelyn back or wanted her to feel the same pain she'd caused him. And deep down, he knew something terrible was about to happen. Rain poured over Sydney the night everything fell apart. The city glistened under the storm, its lights blurring through the downpour as Arjun drove toward Evelyn's mansion. She had finally called him after weeks of silence, her voice trembling as she said they needed to talk, one last time. Arjun took it as a sign of hope, a final chance to make things right. But beneath his nervous anticipation, anger still simmered, mixed with heartbreak and confusion. He arrived at the gated estate around 10 p.m., dressed in a dark jacket, his hair soaked by the rain. Security cameras captured him stepping through the main door, greeted by Evelyn, wrapped in a silk robe, her expression unreadable. For nearly 2 hours, they stayed inside. No one knew what was said, but neighbors later reported muffled voices and a loud crash. When Arjun left, his clothes were drenched, his face pale, his steps heavy, as though he was walking away from something he couldn't undo. The next morning, Evelyn was found dead in her bedroom, her lifeless body lying beside a shattered perfume bottle. The silk scarf around her neck told the story of her final moments. The police found no signs of forced entry, no missing valuables, only a half-empty glass of wine and traces of Arjun's fingerprints on it. Charles Carter, who had been out of town on business, returned to find his mansion swarming with detectives and media crews. Arjun didn't run. He sat alone in his apartment when the police came for him, silent as they cuffed him and read his rights. Inside his drawer, investigators found a gold bracelet belonging to Evelyn, the final piece of evidence that would brand him as the killer Sydney couldn't stop talking about. The news of Evelyn Carter's death exploded across Australia like wildfire. Headlines screamed of scandal, betrayal, and murder. The image of Arjun Mehta, once the promising Indian engineer, now flashed on every screen as the lover turned killer. The evidence looked airtight. His fingerprints on her glass, The jewelry in his drawer, the security footage showing him entering and leaving the mansion that night. Still, Arjun maintained his innocence, claiming Evelyn was alive when he walked out. But no one seemed to believe him. During interrogation, Arjun told detectives that Evelyn had been distraught, terrified of her husband's temper. He insisted that Charles Carter was behind it all, that he'd been framed to take the fall. His story sounded desperate, and the police had no reason to trust him. Meanwhile, Charles appeared calm and composed, grieving in front of the cameras, portraying himself as the heartbroken husband wronged by his wife's secret affair. The courtroom became a battlefield. Prosecutors painted Arjun as an unstable man whose obsession turned deadly when Evelyn tried to end the relationship. They called him a liar, a manipulator who couldn't accept rejection. The defense countered with a different angle, that Charles had discovered the affair and used his power to cover up the real crime. Then came the private investigator's testimony. He revealed that Charles had hired him to spy on Evelyn months earlier and that he had warned her about Arjun's escalating obsession days before she died. The jury was torn between two villains, the jealous lover or the vengeful husband. Each new piece of evidence seemed to twist the story in another direction. And as the trial dragged on, it became clear that the truth behind Evelyn's death was darker and far more complicated than anyone had imagined. Just when the jury seemed ready to convict Arjun, a shocking revelation flipped the entire case on its head. A new forensic team reanalyzed the silk scarf used to kill Evelyn, using advanced fiber matching technology. What they found changed everything. Two distinct fiber types were identified, one belonging to Arjun's jacket, and the other to a luxury robe that matched one owned by Charles Carter. The discovery shattered the prosecution's narrative. It meant Arjun wasn't the only one in that room that night. Investigators reopened key parts of the case, digging deeper into Charles's movements. Flight records showed he'd returned to Sydney hours earlier than he claimed. Security footage from a nearby gas station captured his car driving toward his mansion around 9:45 p.m., minutes before Arjun arrived. The puzzle pieces began to align in a way no one expected. Prosecutors now suspected that Charles had discovered the affair, confronted Evelyn, and killed her in a fit of rage. When Arjun showed up later, confused and emotional, Charles used the opportunity to frame him, planting her jewelry in his drawer through contacts in law enforcement and private security. When confronted with the new evidence, Charles tried to deny everything, but his mask slipped. He was caught at Sydney Airport days later, attempting to board a private jet to Singapore. The truth was finally exposed. Evelyn had died not from a lover's madness, but from her husband's twisted revenge. Arjun was acquitted of murder but convicted of obstruction for lying about certain details of that night. His freedom came with scars that would never heal. Sydney moved on, but the scandal left behind a haunting reminder. In a world of power, passion, and deceit, love can be the deadliest weapon of all.